I'm back, bitches. I'm talking about the homos again. I've been gone for a while, but I've got a lot of assignments due this week, so it's time to procrastinate. So excited for this one. Today, I'm going to be sharing and summarizing for you a recent archaeological discovery that has only been published within the last 2 years. This is the story of the oldest known burial in Africa. In Kenya's southeast, there lies a cave called Panga Yasaidi, and this cave holds really rich archaeological deposits which date back to the Middle Stone Age or the Mesolithic. There are also artifacts from the later Stone Age and the Iron Age. So we're really looking at human habitation in this cave from 80,000 years ago to up to 400 years ago. And the discovery I'm going to be talking about with you today takes place right at that 80,000 year mark. So in 2021, a paper was published in Nature magazine by a lot of people. Found a lot of really cool shit in this cave, but the coolest by far is the remains they found of a toddler between the ages of 2.5 to 3, who has since been named Mtoto, or child in Swahili. Mtoto was found in a specially dug grave, which is now known to us as the oldest human burial in Africa. After lots of scientific procedures, archaeologists have come to the conclusion that the child was probably buried shortly after death and wrapped in some kind of shroud, then laid down in the fetal position and given some kind of pillow. The care that people took in burying this child and the accommodations they made in order for this lifeless body to be comfortable suggests that they had attached some kind of deeper meaning to this event other than just needing to dispose of a body. Tell me more right now, you're saying. Okay, I will. Let's talk about the excavation, which really started getting interesting in 2013. In 2013, excavations at Panga Yasaidi cave revealed the edge of a small pit, and it was so fragile and small that they didn't really want to dig into it because they thought it would kind of collapse everything. So they actually used a tube to go in and receive the sediment from the pit. What was lovely about that was a wonderful surprise that the sediment actually revealed that there were some bones in this pit. Fuck yes, every archaeologist's dream. It wasn't, however, until 4 years later when archaeologists and scientists started to think that they'd found more than just some random remains. So they dug 10 feet below the cave floor. They found a circular shallow pit filled with an array of bones. Very cool, more bones. But the bones were in such a state of decomposition that every time they tried to touch them or get them out, they just crumbled into dust. Slay. We've all been there. So the team just decided to extract the entire pit. Instead of just the bones, they just took the whole pit out of the cave. Necessity breeds innovation. They protected it with a plaster encasement and then they moved it to a special laboratory to examine. What they found was the well-preserved skull and face of a child. I would be losing my shit. So although the right ribs on which Mtoto was lying were flattened, the spine and even the rib cage curvature was still really well, perfectly intact. This makes me, and the people who wrote the article that I read, think that the child was buried really soon after death and rapidly covered with soil and left to decompose peacefully. On top of this, there are 3 more things which are really interesting about these remains. The glaring thing to archaeologists which uncovered their remains was that Mtoto's bones were really different to other animal bones that they'd found in the area, which had been broken and battered and scattered all around. Mtoto's were obviously quite well preserved. The pit they found Mtoto in also had a mix of different sediments, which differed in color and texture from the sediments surrounding it, which reveals that it was dug and then later filled back in with dirt. And geochemical analysis of the soil revealed high levels of calcium oxide and manganese oxide, which, if you know what this means, fucking nerd. But also you would know that these chemical signals are expected to be produced by the purification of a body. Tick, tick, tick. It's giving intentional burial. Another really interesting thing about this burial, I mean, it's all interesting. Toto's knees were drawn to their chest and their right clavicle and first and second ribs were rotated 90 degrees, which would be consistent with the upper body being wrapped or shrouded by some kind of something. It is very possible, not confirmed, are you new here? But it is very possible that Mtoto's body was shrouded with large leaves or animal skins. And my favorite part of this whole burial, the position of the head suggests that Mtoto's head was placed purposefully, lovingly, on a pillow made of perishable materials. Please bury me lovingly with a pillow. So the first 3 cervical vertebrae still attached to the base of the skull are collapsed and rotated to a degree that suggests that Mtoto's head was laid to rest with a pillow of some kind of biodegradable substance. When this pillow later decomposed, the head and vertebrae tilted accordingly. And then, just like that. Now, if you thought that this was just a meaningless, lifeless body with no kind of symbolic significance or anything, why would you go through so much trouble, so much effort, and put so much love into burying this child? Would you wrap it up tightly and place its little baby head gently upon a pillow? Probs not. This is an example of the symbolic mind start to find its way into humanity. Okay! I would like to preface this section with a big preface. There is no way to know what these people were thinking when they buried Mtoto. There's no way to ever know for sure, which is what makes archaeology so enticing and mysterious. It's that no matter how much research you do, no matter how much evidence there is, we're never going to be in the minds of people who lived 78,000 years ago. And so we'll never really know what the purpose was for this burial and what it meant to them. But we can assume all we like, and we can make evidence-based suggestions, and it's fun to think about. Based on the evidence we have, this burial could show the possibility of a ritualized cultural practice, or at the very least, evidence that people 78,000 years ago honored and cared for their dead, both of which are amazing. Okay, let's talk about symbolism in humanity, because this might be one of the most important things ever. No, that's not an overstatement. No, I will not be retracting that. The use of symbolism and the engagement in symbolic activities or symbolic practices is considered a hallmark of human cognition. Like, it's what makes us humans, love. It's the one thing that possibly distinguishes us from other animals. Like, humans and their ability to conceptualize something that we've never seen, our ability to hold something sentimental just based off symbolic virtue and value is fucking insane. The ability to create and understand symbols like language and art and ritual, these are all symbolic things. We can look at something and be like, yeah, I know what that means. It's just, those are just symbols. This is very closely linked to the development of the human brain and how the human brain got from where it started to here throughout hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. But we don't really know when the symbolic mind started to appear in humans. When did the first humans start to put meaning into symbols? What made us go from seeing a rock to seeing a god? From seeing the ocean to seeing a living, breathing thing? Humans are deeply symbolic, sentimental creatures. And the discovery of the Pangayasaidi burial provides evidence that early humans in Africa had the cognitive capacity for symbolic thinking and symbolic behavior, which is like a really fucking important milestone in human cognition and culture. Quote time. One of the authors of this study, Maria Martinon Torres, said that that's what makes this so special. We're looking at a behavior that we consider ourselves so typical of humans and unique, which is establishing a relationship with the dead. Yeah, because what? Because yeah, she's so right for that. So this burial indicates that the people who buried Mtoto had a belief system and or cultural practices that involved caring for their dead. This could be as simple as just wanting to honor the life that they knew had existed in this person, or it could be as complex as a full-on belief system of a life after death. And the ability to connect a dead body with what used to have life in it kind of suggests that life is seen as a force that is external and can still be believed in post-death. The careful placement of their body and the use of a pillow suggest the people who buried the child were capable of abstract thinking and planning and creating symbolic objects. That's quite an insane concept, since remember, we're talking about 78,000 years ago. That's so long ago, this might not even be Homo sapiens. It probs is though. We know so little of the societal structure of people that long ago. And for some people, it's hard to comprehend them as people at all. But small actions like this imbue them with so much personality that it's really hard to ignore. So the Pangayasaidi cave burial is a major breakthrough for understanding how populations in early Africa treated their dead. And now what's cool is that we can situate this and place this in the context of what we know about how culture developed in other regions. Because we know that in the Eurasian record, in the Eurasian archaeological record, child or young baby burials are not uncommon. You actually see them quite a lot. And now we're seeing this in Africa as well, which suggests for some archaeologists a kind of special treatment of the young and this idea of complex mourning linked to complex social behaviors. It's also pretty sick because found along with this burial was the fragment of a giant African land snail shell that has evidence of incisions made on it using some kind of tool. Obviously, we can't speak to the symbolic nature of this shell, but it does show some form of human modification, and it was placed inside the burial with the child. So hopefully we find more evidence of burials with grave goods this long ago. That would be really awesome. Okay, so this burial is really fucking old, and it's so old in fact that when the archaeologists found it, they had to test it to see if it was even Homo sapiens, because it could have been other things. Around 78,000 years ago, there were a few human species running around the earth doing their silly little things. And in Africa, this included both Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis. Choose your fighter. Spoiler alert, I know which one wins. Anyways, in the taxonomic assessment of Mtoto's bones, specifically their teeth, archaeologists compared their teeth to both Neanderthal and sapien teeth. And the results were clearly modern human, so they are sapiens, but they also had some primitive features. This is one of the teeth they found that is definitely a sapiens tooth. But baby girl, this one looks like a Neanderthal. This supports the recent archaeological and genetic theory, which suggests that our species, Homo sapiens, didn't evolve from a single population in one region of Africa, but rather modern human populations living in different parts of Africa actually differed quite a lot from each other and followed slightly different evolutionary trajectories. Which kind of makes sense to me because I feel like evolution really isn't linear at all. It's not like evolution evolved with humans in mind, thinking humans are going to want to categorize me one day. There are probably a lot more human species that have existed on this planet than we even know of. And though this cave shows the earliest intentional burial in Africa, burials of Neanderthals and even modern humans in Eurasia range back as far as 120,000 years ago. This includes adults and also quite a high proportion of child burials. Professor Michael Petralia states that the Panga Yasaidi burial shows the inhumation of the dead is a cultural practice shared by Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. This find opens up questions about the origin and evolution of mortuary practices between two closely related human species, and the degree to which our behaviors and emotions differ from one another. So there you go. Thank you for joining me today. That is the story of Mtoto, the oldest intentional human burial in Africa. The oldest burial that we actually know, like the oldest one that is intentional, is actually at the site of Kavze in Israel, which has been dated to approximately 100,000 years ago. And the Kavze burial consisted of the remains of several individuals, so it was almost like a mass grave. And they were buried in shallow pits with grave goods, 100,000 years ago, with grave goods. So I could make a video about that too, because that is technically the oldest intentional burial that I think we have in the world. So that's all from me. Bye, bitch.